Okay, thank you, Mayor, and all the City Council, and Ms. Hand and Ms. Bruce. Appreciate the opportunity to share this info. This is some really, excuse me, interesting stuff. I am 44 years old. I've been in Vestavia since the day I was born. My grandparents moved to Vestavia in 1972. My grandparents joined the Vestavia Country Club December 10th, 1949. My grandfather was also president of the club in 1962. My parents moved to Vestavia in 1978, and I have lived on Charter Road in Coventry ever since. And me and my wife moved to Charter Road in 2002. So we're not far from where we grew up. I attended East Elementary. My wife attended West Elementary. We both went to Vestavia High School. My kids went to East and are at Dolly Ridge and Cosatt now. So, needless to say, we are a family of Vestavia. And so it's really exciting to show you some really interesting stuff that I've just somehow stumbled across. Just to be clear, I am not a historian. All of y'all know a lot more about our city than I will ever know. I did grow up here, but I do not know the full extent of all the information that you guys have. How I found the info, I'll go through this real quick before we get into it. I was doing research on the country club. I was working on the golf course project several years ago. We spent about 10 years working on it, and a guy in Sweden who's a golf course architect sent me a drawing. And it was this drawing right here. And we've got a bunch of drawings at the club of past stuff, but I had never seen that drawing. So I immediately asked, I said, where did you get this drawing? He said, well, I got it in the National Archives in the Olmsted collection. And I first thought is, why in the world is a drawing of Vestavia in the Olmsted Archives? So I immediately called the National Archives, and they have a huge Olmsted collection. It's the most well-preserved documents really in the whole Library of Congress. And I said, I'm looking for this drawing. Do you have anything on Vestavia Country Club? And he said, no, I don't have anything on Vestavia Country Club. But he said, I do have something on Vestavia Hills Golf and Riding Club. I said, well, it's got to be the same thing. And I said, well, can you send me, all this info? And he said, absolutely. He said, but I also have a drawing, or I have a whole file number on Vestavia Gardens. And I have another file on Vestavia City Center. So, my email almost shut down. I've got about 160 massive drawings and over 200 letters between the Olmsted Brothers and Charles Berger in the city of Vestavia and the country club. So, having said all that, let's get into some cool info here. The picture you see there, the Olmsted Brothers, that's Frederick Law Olmsted in the middle. John Charles Olmsted on the right and Frederick Law Jr. on the left. And Frederick Law Olmsted was born on April 26, 1822. And the reason that is significant is in 8 days it will be his 200th birthday. And so there's a huge push right now through the Olmsted Society and Olmsted.org for the 200th birthday of Frederick Law Olmsted. So there's a big push across the country to celebrate all his work. So we hit this at the perfect time. But Frederick Law Olmsted wore many hats in his career. He sailed to China as a sea merchant. He became a staunch advocate for preservation of the environment. And he was a journalist for the New York Times. And he was also turned into a farmer after he got tired of writing for the New York Times. And that's what kind of launched his career into landscape architecture. In the early 1850s, the New York State Legislature started purchasing acreage in this growing metropolis that they had, and they hired a local farmer to manage the property. And at the time, it was pig houses, shanties, no trees, no nothing, just a swampland in the middle of New York. And in the latter part of 1850, the state legislature decided to have a design contest of what to do with this massive tract of land. And the guy who was running the property, Frederick Law Olmsted, and his partner, Calvert Vaux, created the Greensward Plan, which is now Central Park. So his first project was probably his most well-known as a landscape architect. In 1873, he was commissioned by the United States Congress to create a plan for the Capitol grounds, the White House, and the National Mall. And he also was the one who designed and built the Capitol steps, which you see the marble Capitol steps right here. That was all his addition to the Capitol. In 1883, Olmsted master plan, site selected, and landscape plan Stanford University. And he started kind of on a college tour, so to speak. He master planned Duke, Cornell, Louisiana State University, Indiana, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, University of Mississippi, Auburn University, and University of Alabama. In 1889, Olmsted, along with his sons, John Charles and Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., created the master plan, site selection, and created the gardens at Biltmore, the home of George Vanderbilt. He also, I think there was almost 200,000 acres at the Biltmore Estate, and Frederick and his sons created the first forestry program, which later became the U.S. Forestry Service. So these guys were pioneers in a lot of different things. In 1917, there were 47 on staff with the Olmsted Brothers firm. By the 1930s, there were over 60 employees. And they went off, and the brothers went off and pretty much created the industry of landscape architecture. The two sons also created the Society of Landscape Architects. Preservation was at the heart of really what Frederick Law Olmsted was all about. He was instrumental in the preservation of the Yosemite Valley into a national park. He master planned and recreated and cleaned up Niagara Falls. And in 1916, Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. Wrote into the Congressional Record the Organic Act, which created the National Park Service. And just a really great quote here. I love the last part there. Promoting public recreation and public health to the use and enjoyment by the people of the natural scenery and objects of interest. As of 2022, the National Park Service employs over 12,000 employees and oversees 63 designated national parks. And that is the Olmsted website is actually the NPS, the National Park Service website. So it is right out of the Olmsted family. They also did a little golf course work. Augusta National Golf Club, home of the Masters. They worked with Alistair McKenzie, Clifford Roberts, and Bobby Jones to create Augusta National Golf Club. So in total, the Olmsted Brothers firm was responsible for over 6,000 projects worldwide, 700 public parks, 2,000 private residences, 350 subdivisions, 100 hospitals, 100 libraries, 125 commercial buildings, 75 churches, 150 golf course master plans, and 250 college campuses. So these guys were the most prolific landscape architecture firm of all time. Which leads us to Howard College and Stanford University. So in the late 40s, the Olmsted Brothers were contacted by the trustees at Howard College for a new home, new site, and the Olmsted Brothers selected the location on Lakeshore Parkway. And that is where our story begins. So, Charles Bird, in October 29th, 1947, here's a letter from his real estate company, from him, address to the Olmsted Brothers, Brookline, Massachusetts. Gentlemen, I understand that your C.R. Parker, which is Carl Russ Parker, who was he was one of the principals in the Olmsted firm at the time, will be in Birmingham somewhere around the 10th or 12th of November. I have a project to be known as Vestavia Garden in Birmingham that I would like to discuss with you, Mr. Parker. So the next letter there is from C.R. Parker, Carl West Parker, confirming that he will be in Birmingham and would love to sit down and chat. So for the next 8 years, we're going to try to cover a lot of ground here. And so the first project, so this is from, this is the actual cover of the book that held all the photographs for all their projects. So every project has a job number. So the 9800 is the job number. That's how you look them up in the Library of Congress. But obviously, Olmsted Brothers, landscape architects, Brookline, Massachusetts, Vestavia Gardens. So everybody's pretty familiar with this little property here, which is now Vestavia Baptist. It was the 20-acre home of George Ward. And as you can see, a little civil temple out there on the crest. Looks so small compared to the home. One thing I'll point out here on this photograph, this is Vestavia Drive. It went around through here. And a lot of the letters that I've read, which these are all the letters, this is just some of them. I don't have all of them here. It was almost like 70% of the letters were about Vestavia Drive and what to do with it. But this was when it was George Ward's property here. So this photograph is from the archives. And you can read down at the bottom, received from Mr. Byrd, August 15th, 1949. Temple from the East Lawn. Again, you've got your job number right there. Incredible drawing here, sketch from the Olmsted Brothers of the home, which ended up turning into a restaurant partly and some other stuff. But again, this was January 21st, 1948. Another picture. So that one says taken by CRP, which is Carl West Parker. Again, he was the principal contact on this job. This was obviously July 1950. Looking west, so that would be Vestavia Drive, would be kind of moving up the right side. Kind of looking towards the country club, really. Another drawing which I have up here on the table, pergola and reflecting pool. Again, if you can't see close enough, you've got Olmsted Brothers, landscape architects, Vestavia Gardens, and then January 21st, 1948. Another photograph that says received from Mr. Byrd, August 15th, 1949. And again, that's looking west, and that's Vestavia Drive there in the distance. And this is probably my favorite drawing of all of them. It's on the table up here, and it's actually, I think if you print it to scale, it's like 3 or 4 times bigger than that. It's just a massive hand-drawn master plan or general plan for the gardens. This was published May 12th, 1950. And the level of detail, I mean, I think all of this was completed, or the bulk of it was. Again, I'm not the expert here, but I don't know if any of this was actually completed, the lower portion of the gardens. Really cool perspective shot there of where he was calling the dining right here, looking out over the park. And then you see Vestavia Drive is now gone from in between Civil Temple and the house. But that's a scale of 16 feet to 1 inch. So that's a big plan, and it's really cool. I know it's great to have a church there, but man, it'd be pretty to have those gardens there. Just another, these drawings for the garden are just incredible. And there's about 50 some odd of them. I only brought a few of them to show, but just another really cool. Here's Civil Temple, and then what he called Pattern Garden. And they've got, potted camellias. They planned everything. These guys are so detail oriented. And here's a picture, more recent, after Byrd bought it. You can see the pattern gardens, which is in that drawing right here. And then you see the 8 marble columns, and then obviously the dining room now is added on. And that is the property down there that was not developed for the garden. Just another cool drawing. A perspective sketch of those columns. And then that's the reflecting pool and pergola, which is in the big drawing over there.
All those were done by hand.
Oh yeah, there's no computer generated stuff now. There's our famous Sheila Bruce. So this was a letter March 15th, 1949, and it's talking about, it says right there, I had a letter from Mr. Nardini as well as yours about the statues we have placed in order for the 7 goddesses to go in the temple room. And Sheila's told me a little bit about this story, but I think we've only found one. Is that correct?
Yeah. Which we have, it's in our historical book.
Yeah.
Hoping we'll move it our new building.
So just a, really cool link to the past there. In this letter though, down at the bottom, starting about right there, we think now that the garden will be open on April 15th for the preview party and April 16th for the formal opening. And of course, we'd like for you to plan to be here at that time. The club's coming along nicely, and I think your next visit will see considerable progress. So in 1949, I've separated these out by projects, but they're kind of all going on at the same time. Obviously in the letter it says the club is making considerable progress. So that moves us into Country Club. So again, here's the cover of the photo album. Seems like it's had 3 names. We've had the Vestavia Golf Club, Vestavia Country Club, and the Vestavia Hills Golf and Riding Club. So this job number is 9811. And there was a lot of, the letters that went with the club and the gardens were much more romantic. A lot of interesting stuff. The stuff at the city center is a lot about drainage and erosion and property lines and all that, so it's not very exciting, but a lot of cool letters that were in the club files. This one was really interesting. December 13th, actually this is the second letter that he wrote. December 13th, 1947. The engineer, which is Walter Scholl, which will be in another letter. I think that's his grandfather from Walter, current Walter that we all know. Engineer has been unable to finish the additional topo map for Vestavia Gardens. He has done the field work, but it will be a day or 2 before he completes the map. Following your suggestion, I'm emailing under separate cover, topo map of the garden, floor plan of the building, postcard of the building, topo map of the part of property for golf course, map of our subdivision and acreage. So again, 1947, he's talking about really all 3 projects moving forward. And down at the bottom there, Mr. J.D. McGovern with Donald Ross wrote me, and I plan to send him the same information on the golf course subdivision acreage map. Donald Ross is probably the most famous golf course architect in all the world. Famous courses like Pinehurst. They're all over the country, but the fact that he was involved at Vestavia at some point is really, really interesting. Unfortunately, in April of 1948, Donald Ross passed away. So there wasn't much, don't know how much he was actually working on the project, but I'm not going to obviously read this whole letter, but Carl Russ Parker wrote back in, 1947? So sometime before this, Carl Russ Parker wrote back and was very concerned about the success of the club, of the gardens being a public dining area. And this is Charles Bird's response, which I really like. And really, he's talking his first 2 paragraphs about how they're going to operate the club and how they're going to operate the gardens. But this last paragraph, I think, is just fantastic. It just kind of echoes back to the very first slide. I might say in closing that we have considered all the drawbacks, and while we know that it would be somewhat of a gamble, we think it is worth taking in view of our investment on the mountain. I just think that's a really cool somebody be a leader and step up and do what they think's best regardless of what somebody's telling them. And I thought that was, I don't know Charles Bird, but that was pretty cool letter there. So November 8th, 1948, we have a logo, Vestavia Hills Golf and Riding Club. We have a downtown address at the club. That's probably Charlie Bird's office, I imagine. But there is a president, executive committee, and board. So our club history is wrong. We have our first president as H.B. Phillips, and it is Sidney Smyer. Everybody knows who Smyer is. But I found that pretty interesting because we kind of debated at the club about what year did we actually get founded. It was 51, 50, 49, 48, whatever, but now we know. But you can also see the drawing of the clubhouse and pool, which will be different once we get into planning it here shortly. So here's the first published plan, which I have on the table up here, which is another one that's a huge drawing. I had to shrink it down to get it on the page. That was August 31st, 1948. And that shows the riding ring right there, the stables, the clubhouse, the pool's down here now. The tennis courts were west of the parking lot, which is now 10T. And then you're starting to see the development of the neighborhood. You see no house lots here. You do have lots here. And then some interesting names, Kane Avenue, which is now Southwood. And Phillips Avenue up there at the top is Shades Crest. So, just some interesting street names. Next letter here was, man on the left there is Frederick Finlay. When Donald Ross passed away, Frederick Finlay became the golf course architect of record. He was from Australia. He was the golf pro at Metropolitan Golf Club. Really nice course in Australia, but he moved to Virginia to build golf courses. And he was contacted by the State Country Club. Again, Charles Bird reached out to the best of the best, it looks like. Really cool picture or drawing of the stables and horses, horse ring. Again, another 16:1 scale, which is a massive drawing. And I love a lot of these drawings, they have the elevation below, just to get a feel for the terrain. Really cool picture of the horses up at the club, a long time ago. And then, so this was the architectural drawing from Pendleton and Mims Architects, Birmingham. They worked with the Olmsted Brothers to do all the clubhouse work and stable work. So there's the stable, and then here is a picture of the stables from the Olmsted archives. So show ring and stable again, you got your job number down there at the bottom. And I think this is my favorite picture in the whole deal.
Smile.
So, just a really cool picture. For someone who never saw the horses at Vestavia, I know my mom and dad saw them, and probably some of y'all saw them. That's really a unique time. Another drawing just of the club tennis course, and then you got your pool down there at the bottom. And then a shot of the pool, the original pool. A long time ago. So there's the pool now. It's pretty much in the same place. Tennis courts got moved south in their drawing. They had the tennis courts right here. And obviously the club has changed a lot since those days. And then to me, what drew everybody to this area was our view. You know, growing up here, you get used to seeing it. You don't really, you don't really register. I remember going away to college for a few months, and I came back, and I was like, wow, has that always been there? And, you know, when you bring people from other areas and they see the view, they don't realize that, you know, this is little old Birmingham, Alabama. So that'll lead us into the city, or city center. So this was a letter in 1953. There is Mr. Scholl, and it's handed me today the preliminary map and part of the business and apartment section for Vestavia Hills Community Center, and marked in green pencil, existing subdivision, and in red pencil, proposed subdivision. I'll be honest, I have not gone through enough details of this. I started looking at it really hard over the last couple of weeks, and you know, the more I look at it, the more it seems like they did it, if that makes sense. The first time I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's just a picture of a city center, you know. So here is this was the drawing that accompanied that letter. You can see the golf course there, the school, all the neighborhoods, and then here's you can see the green and red pencil he was talking about. I don't know, you know, I've got some aerial photographs from 47 to 51, and it looks like the development really kind of exploded like 50, 51. Y'all can probably talk to that more than I can. But in the 47 aerial, there was no homes, like around the club or the course or the school, like there was nothing. And then all of a sudden in 51, it's like everybody's here. So this was 53. I don't know how much of that was developed yet. Here's another drawing that I suspect is older because the club property, you can see the lines for the golf course. The club property is all of this right here. And then your school's right there. So you can see, I guess this is Burr's development, but he once had a neighborhood where the clubhouse, the club was. And then all of this, you can see, is drawn in. All of these are drawn into this map. So, I mean, what that tells me is that, you know, the Olmsted drew all of that. I don't know. I mean, find out. So that's a really interesting map to me, and it's something that I have not dug in yet. Again, you've got Kane Avenue. I'm curious what Kane means or what it represents, but that's Southwood. I mean, Chestnut, I'm sorry. And Shades Crest is now Shades Crest there.
Is Best Club shown on there?
Best Club would be, it's not on here yet, I guess. Because here's Beaumont coming into the club. So Best Club ought to be right here, going down. Yeah. So that's a drawing that I just really kind of racked my brain a little bit. Again, going back to this drawing of the club, you can see, you know, these are now drawn in. Again, you just don't have any development here yet in the drawings. So that's, you know, that, I mean, I have a feeling that the Olmsteds and Bird and Walter Scholl kind of teamed up and did this whole thing, but I just don't know, you know, where one stops and one begins. So this is the first study A, preliminary study A of the shopping center. And you've got your Olmsted tagline down there, and their job number was 9950. And that is, this is Laurel right here, and then Kentucky is right through here.
Was that in 1960 when they started the?
53.
When they started the shopping center, was that early?
That's what the plan says, I don't know. So this is Plan C, Study C, right there. Again, you got a better picture now. This is Laurel, there's Kentucky. And I don't think this is called Montclair. Maybe somebody can answer that. And then, can you go back? Is it still Montclair?
It's still
Yep.
behind the scenes.
Yeah. So there's a perspective drawing again, all hand done. I don't think that's exactly what was built. No, it's not. But, this is a cool letter from 1953. It's just, this whole discussion is about, Charlie Bird wanted to put a service station on the corner somewhere. And, the Olmsteds were they're so conscious about the aesthetics of the city and how it would actually function. And he talks about, this should strictly be a service station, not a combination service station and repair garage, and no sales room for new or secondhand cars. It must be kept clean, clear of all merchandise or rubbish on the exterior, and quiet, not a corner hangout. Right, it's from Carl Ross Parker, Two Bird. It should not cater to trucks. So it's just interesting, the level of detail that they went through in their minds. They literally, before zoning really probably existed, they were the zoners of their plans. I think this is what got built, maybe. So this was 1953, I believe. 1955. So then the next drawing is from the architect. And is that similar to what was built there?
Yeah.
Where Sunmark was.
So in total, the projects in our city included over 160 drawings and photographs and 200 letters between the Olmsteds and Charlie Bird, his associates. So this is not a insignificant amount of work in our city. It was about an 8-year relationship. There's a lot of cities, even one locally here, that claims an Olmsted legacy, and they have no Olmsted connection. We have a massive amount of, connecting the dots to do, but I mean, this is from the beginning this is the Olmsteds. So, I believe Bird had a vision, for this city. I think that, the Olmsteds were partners in that vision. The gardens are no longer here, the club's still here, the city's still here. And I do think going back to, the original kind of lay of the land, this is really probably the most, or maybe this one, probably this one. It looks to me through the letters, it looks like that, from a home situation and streets, they planned kind of that, and then, this area right here towards the shopping center, which I think was the first development in our city. I think this was already, which is Philip Shakespeare, so I think there were some homes already here in the early 50s, just looking at aerial photographs. But Bird and Olmsted's, the club, this area, kind of across here and then to the shopping center.
Yeah, when you cross 31 on Chase Crest, there's another house that was built in 1947.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, and the aerial photograph I have of 47 shows, a lot of homes across that ridge, But there's nothing, it's just forest south of that.
Alan, wasn't it the 180-degree view of the mountains that really drew them to it?
Yeah, it's, going back to that letter, right there, the investment on the mountain, and that last sentence there, we think that what we have in mind is the best because of the fact this property has always attracted a lot of attention and is well known throughout the South. I obviously walked out on this property, you want to do something with it. So anyway, that kind of concludes, what I presented today, there's obviously a ton more. I mean, again, there's 160 drawings. I mean, this is just, I just printed out a few, cool ones. I'll leave on my favorite picture. But one thing I would say is, like I said, I'm not a historian. Y'all know more about our city than I'll ever know, but I think we've got to figure out a way to piece all this together, and connect all the dots, because there's a lot of, it's just not totally connected. And I mean, the club, Jeff Baker, the general manager of the club's here, and David Cowan, one of our past presidents, and, we're trying right now to piece together our history. And I think, the city's history, I've read everything I can read online, but it's missing, a huge, huge part. And it's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's the way history is. Sometimes it just gets lost. But again, in 8 days, it's the 200th anniversary of our birthday for Frederick Law Olmsted, and there's a huge thing. I've already registered all of our club and the city through their website. They got some cool stuff that you can put up and do, but I think it's something that we definitely should promote in some way. So,
Great job.
but that's it.
Thank you.